do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and FreedomSlips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, FreedomSlips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Hello and welcome back to Dave and Mackie's Shiny Side Out. This is the Mind Control show cycle. We've been going on for a while, and because I found some more material, we'll be going on for a while longer. I said erroneously this would be the last. It's not the last, Dave. It's not the last. By a long shot. This is Listener Fun Radio. If you can donate, please do. This is very important. You know, no one else supports the station. There's no government funding or otherwise for that matter. So if you can, please do. And yes, we are on page 93, the Invisible Third World War. I think that's what we got to. That's what I've got marked here, unless I'm completely off base.
I don't know
yeah,
where
that's right.
you are.
Yeah, no, I didn't add anything to the front. So wherever you stopped last time, that's where we still are. It's everything the new is in the back of it. So we should be, because we finished the Mind Behavior Control March 7, 1973 document, Freedom of Information, which is on page 73, I think. We finished that one. And then, this is 77. Are we on page 77?
We should be on 75.
Yeah, I think that's about right.
We just read the paragraph number 1 saying hypnosis.
Oh, we did that? Okay. Go ahead then, my friend. That's where we are. That's right.
All righty then. I'm just finding the actual page because I can see it there now. Not yet. No, that's not the same one. Hang on a minute.
I've got it. I'll take it. So this is again a Freedom of Information. We do apologize for the poor quality of the document.
76 on your document, though.
Yeah.
ESP, right. The basic position.
Okay, no, you take it then, because that's not what I have.
That's right. Hang on. I'm just.
Oh no, I do. That's the one. Yeah.
You
76.
Should. Yeah. All right. So.
Okay. You do it.
Yes. Number 2. ESP.
Who's on second? Who's on
ESP,
first?
the basic position, has been to stay abreast of the developments through the use of a personal services contract. I'm gonna do something here. Put the middle screen on. Apart from the monitoring effort, I did support the project with something versus twins. Something was negative. Plans for future archive research are something, but are something, can't read it, to be a cooperative endeavor with the contrast of current program something. Project summary, 19th of December, 1966. Land sleep learning studies are continuing with no problems. Data is suggestive, but not something partially limiting. I'm going to guess. Meg is nodding. He nods.
No, look, I don't know if you guys can see this in the stream, but
they can. I'm putting it up because it's so difficult to read.
Yeah, the text is very poor quality. Look, I will go to the original text, see if I can get a better extraction of the PDF. But if it's unreadable by a machine, I'm not sure that I'll have a much much better chance. The next document is called the Invisible Third World War, and the document number is CIA-RDP 90-00965R000100260020-4. And it was created, the document, December 22nd, 2016. It was released December 21st, 2011, and it was published July 1, 1985, in fact. Now, this was declassified in part, it says here. The sanitized copy, which is the one we have, was approved for release in December of 2011. The sanitized copy. So I don't know what the real copy would have looked like. Now, The Invisible Third World War by Walt H. Bauer and Richardson is a book. And the editor's note here is Walter Bauer's Operation Mind Control caused a furor in the United States intelligence community when it was first published in 1975. As far as I can tell, both these gentlemen are still alive, from what I could gather. Bauer's research on the subject of government agency involvement in dangerous and often life-threatening human experimentation on unwitting citizens paved the way for a new era and exposure of such unconstitutional practices. As a result, many such experiments were halted, and the responsible government agencies were forced to release information which had previously been hidden from the general public. Bauer continued his research into the horrifying, mind-crippling effects of government exploitation of its own citizens in mind control experimentation. Now, this is the sanitized version, Dave.
Mm-hmm.
What he uncovered is more incredible than any science fiction novel. In the as yet unpublished manuscript, The Invisible Third World War, Bauer and co-author Richard Sutton revealed that the world is already locked in deadly, invisible warfare, fighting for the ultimate prize, the mind of man. When the first atomic bomb was detonated at Alamogordo, in New Mexico in 1944, the warriors of the modern world experienced a flash of insight that changed the nature of war forever. The men who built the bomb realized that civilian populations were now unavoidable targets and that conventional war had now become a dangerous trigger, which could catalyze an earth-destroying retaliation with nuclear weapons. Such old-fashioned methods of warfare as gunpowder, employed by revolutionaries fighting protracted conflicts, were suddenly perceived as potential threats which could ignite the nuclear holocaust. The only safe way to wage war, the warriors realized, was to wage it silently. Invisible warfare, or IW as it came to be known, became a necessity. By the end of World War II, IW research had begun in earnest, and in the ensuing decades, modern warriors developed a number of insidious methods of subduing enemy populations without their ever knowing that a war had even begun. Secret, invisible weapons now pose a more ominous threat to life than even thermonuclear holocaust. Not only have these weapons been developed without the knowledge of their intended victims, but worse, they cannot even be detected at the very moment they are murdering or robotizing civilian populations. Only if the veil of secrecy is lifted will the free people of the world have any hope of surviving long enough to liberate themselves from the bleak, unlivable future promised by the technology of invisible war. Chemical and biological warfare, the secret plagues governments do experiment on their own citizens. Now, this was 1986, 85.
Mm-hmm.
Dave, over to you.
Imagine how much IW is taking place now with the technology we have.
Oh, completely.
Psychologically profiling every single individual on the planet on social media and nudging them to wherever they want them to be. New versions of Manchurian candidates, Becky.
That's right. Completely unbeknownst to them.
Yes, that's right. In the Soviet Union, the victims never get a chance to talk about it. But in a supposedly free society, if they are left in good enough shape to remember that they have been victimized, citizens can not only talk about it, they can even sue their government. A wide range of invisible warfare experiments conducted on unwitting citizens by the United States government has already been exposed. In a number of experiments, a secret CIA Army team infected Americans with deadly germs from 1949 to 1969. Equipped with nasal filters and other protective gear, these clandestine agents targeted civilian populations in Hawaii, Alaska, New York, Florida, and California with experimental biological weapons. I like how that's hyphenated. Using trick suitcases and a 1954 Mercury Inquisitor car equipped with dual mufflers and extended tailpipes, the spooks cast their clouds of plague along 4 New York City turnpikes and through the commuter-choked Lincoln and Holland tunnels as well. Attacks in Florida were followed by an epidemic of whooping cough in which 12 persons died, sadly. In 1950, a secret biological warfare weapon launched from a Navy vessel blanketed San Francisco Bay. 30 years later, on learning of the experiments, victims responded with angry lawsuits against the government. Government agents have injected thousands of unsuspecting Americans with germs such as syphilis, and similar incidents have occurred in Britain and the Soviet Union. Now that formerly secret biological warfare documents have been released after nearly 30 years, at least part of the grisly story can be told. What can we learn from the documents which the government is willing to release is just the tip of the invisible iceberg. The fact that innocent civilians have been victimized by their own governments, however, makes clear the threat posed by today's invisible technologies of war. Microbiological Holocaust warriors have been busy developing biological warfare weapons such as prehistoric days, when shamans first poisoned their enemies. The memory of the political use of disease during the Crusades and the Inquisition may have been too fresh in Hitler's mind to allow him to unleash the vast arsenal amassed by Nazi scientists. The Japanese, however, had no such compunctions. After World War II, germ warfare trials were held which convicted a number of their war criminals. Those trials, even more sensational than the Nuremberg trials, got little attention from the press of the day. Biological warfare was next used during the Korean War, and then it was used in Vietnam. Perhaps the most hideous story is that of the leakage of the anthrax germs from weapons in the remote secret city of Semipalatinsk in the Soviet Union. There, just a few years ago, hundreds died in horrible agony from the anthrax germs created for the purpose of biological warfare. Current genetic developments in what is called recombinant DNA threaten to unleash mutant biological warfare strains from which the world may never recover. Mekki.
Despite an international treaty forbidding the use of biological warfare, some nations today are cheating, using it anyway. According to recently released Pentagon documents, the Soviets may well have used both chemical and biological warfare weapons in Afghanistan. Rocky Mountain Plague. When the news of secret leaking army wet eye is funny, nerve gas canisters in Denver, Colorado was released, it sent shivers through the citizens of the Mile High City. Would Denver be America's first Semipalatinsk. A controversy over how to dispose of the nerve gas bombs has raged over the past few years in Utah and Colorado. The U.S. government wanted to ship the bombs to a remote location in Utah since the task of neutralizing the bombs seemed impossible. The government announced that they would load the bombs on airplanes and fly them from Denver to the remote Utah location. No one wanted leaking bombs flown over the countryside. However, a loud protest arose. Today, those nerve gas bombs sit in a storage depot near the busy Stapleton International Airport in Denver, oozing their toxic contents while legislators of Colorado and Utah battle Pentagon bureaucrats over the life and death question of what to do with unwanted nerve gas. Lowering, germs as well as nerve gas weapons. Chemical warfare development overlaps that of biological warfare and the growth of the new science of genetic engineering, which poses an even greater danger through its invisibility than does well-known and already predicted nuclear holocaust. Mind control. The CIA and Nazi connection, clandestine wizards of the Cold War, have searched for new technology to forcibly control the human mind for more than 40 years. I will submit that it's much longer. Remember, this was written in 1985. At the close of World War II, when the leaders of Nazi and US intelligence agencies joined forces to construct an allied intelligence network, the Nazi spy chief Reinhard Gehlen, the USS's William Donovan, and the FBI's J. Edgar Hoover all conspired to develop mind control weapons. Hoover and Donovan, like their Nazi counterparts, commissioned leading psychiatrists in their nation to come up with an automaton-making technology. So it's essentially turning people into robots. Nazi research into mind control, which began during the 1920s at the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute, inspired the concentration camp atrocities of the infamous Josef Mengele and others. He was the angel of Auschwitz. He was actually a dentist. Terrible. American research in the years following World War II victimized convalescing World War II veterans. The Nazi inspiration for the CIA's mind control operations has recently been documented with the declassification of a project codenamed Paperclip. This was 85, but it was recently declassified in 1985. Okay, so this is a long time ago. Paperclip evolved into a series of CIA projects using unsuspecting civilian guinea pigs. These included such code names as Bluebird, Artichoke, Midnight Climax, and the now infamous MK Ultra. We've spent a lot of time on that, as you might recall, when we talked about human medical experiments. Documents related to these projects have revealed that America's most respected, influential psychiatrists conspired to unleash mind control weapons on unsuspecting Americans, and succeeded. American Frankenstein. Since the days of ancient China, legendary warlord Sun Tzu, mind control has been the most sought-after military weapon. Mind control techniques were developed and refined through the succeeding civilizations of India, China, Egypt, the Mayan Empire, Greece, Rome, medieval Europe, Nazi Germany, Soviet Russia, Red China, and finally, the United States. Some of the more widely used methods of mind control have included sexual manipulation, drug hypnosis, behavior modification, and assorted other methods which control an individual's freedom of thought. Wizards of death. Like biological warfare, chemical warfare was first developed in ancient times. It has been used in World Wars I, II, in the Korean War, and in Vietnam. Disguised as a herbicide, during Vietnam, the chemical warfare weapon Agent Orange, for example, poisoned thousands of American GIs. Today, those GIs suffer from the after effects of the weapon, unable to receive adequate compensation from Uncle Sam, who continues to minimize the dangers of Agent Orange. In 1980, the Soviet Union attacked Afghan rebels with deadly nerve gas. I don't know which one. Mocking every treaty on the books. According to Lieutenant General Nikolai Chernov, the Soviets equipped every division of the army with TMS-65 decontaminant trucks. Soviet-led Warsaw Pact troops regularly conduct nerve gas war games using live weapons and deploying 100,000 chemical and biological warfare specialist troops. Again, this is back in 1985. Dave?
The United States maintained 3 million convulsion-causing sarin artillery shells, several thousand SARS, maybe sarin bombs?
Sarin bombs, yeah.
Sarin bombs, and hundreds of thousands of gas landmines. Nerve gas weapons comprise 2/3 of the 150,000 tons of poison gas in the American arsenal. As they did with biological warfare, the CIA tested chemical warfare weapons on US citizens, attacking hundreds of unsuspecting GIs with BZ and hallucinogen 100 times more powerful than LSD. It was difficult for the BZ victims to complain of after effects of the test. However, the BZ left the victims with amnesia. And I just want to put this out there, that during the first Syrian sarin gas incident, let's call it that, there was media silence that I found post discovering the shell fragments. And the shell fragments apparently seemed to be US shells, if you looked at foreign media. And there was an email, which is now, the whole thing's disappeared off the internet, it's been cleansed. An email from a year prior, a guy or a person had found, and that suggested that this should have been what was put in place, and it took a whole year for it to occur. Very strange. I'm only saying what I'd seen on the internet leading up to this, and a year after hearing that there might be something, and to there actually being something, and then it turning out to be the thing that the email suggested. That's a bit of a surprise to me. But reading this text, I'm no longer surprised. It leaves me in a state of being convinced that this happens even on the slightest of incidents. I no longer question the narrative, but I no longer question the theories that are getting around. Back to the text. CIA intelligence expert John Stock resigned in horror after revelations of chemical warfare atrocities by the agency. Despite the protests of Stockwell and other men on conscience, a powerful lobby today demands repudiation of all treaties out. Despite earlier denials, the CIA did successfully brainwash Americans. Institutional psychiatry has become an instrument of civilian control of the modern state. Mind control policies, tactics, have completely replaced the criminal justice system in the Soviet Union. Behind the Iron Curtain, where intolerable conditions would otherwise spark revolt, psychiatric techniques have turned the Soviet population into a herd of terrified and apathetic automatons. With the high technology Soviet mind control employed against political dissidents to silence them permanently. In the United States, the mental health industry has been operating for many years on Soviet-type plans to replace the American justice system with mind control operations. Electromagnetic mind control, the Moscow signal, protected by the general public's unwillingness to believe that such things can actually happen. Soviet forces have been beaming invisible microwave radiation at Americans for more than 20 years, mysteriously triggering cancer, heart problems, cataracts, and emotional stress. The bizarre Soviet zapping of the US embassy in Moscow, an incident which has been known as the Moscow Signal, may well have been the opening volley of the IW Invisible War of electromagnetic weaponry. In 1962, while sweeping the embassy for bugs, American security personnel detected a microwave beam aimed straight at the embassy. Just pausing the text there for a sec. So, Mekki, do you remember the South American syndrome?
Havana syndrome.
Yeah, Havana, where people became disorientated, forgetful, headaches, and they were all at the same place, and it was suspected that this was occurring there.
But see, this is in '85, right?
Yeah.
And what you're talking about happened in the noughties.
That's right.
So clearly they knew.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like they didn't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. Naturally, the Pentagon and the intelligence community became alarmed at the possibility of neurological and behavioral effects on diplomatic personnel. While keeping the knowledge of the microwave beam secret from the suffering embassy staff for 12 years, the CIA launched a project codenamed Pandora, which was aimed at understanding the Soviets' motives for the microwave attack. Pandora personnel discovered that the Soviets had been conducting extensive microwave research operations for years, and that they had concentrated their studies on the emotional and mental effects of microwaves. Mekki.
By the summer of 1965, a Pentagon-affiliated think tank called the Institute for Defense Analysis convened a special task force to replicate Soviet experiments and analyze the problem. The Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, DARPA, then began experimenting on rhesus monkeys with microwaves at Walter Reed Army Research Institute. Walter Reed always comes up. The results are still classified top secret, but from recent duplicate studies, we learned that microwaves cause profound effects on the central nervous system and change behavior of rhesus monkeys. At a summit meeting at Glassboro, New Jersey, during June of 1967, President Lyndon Johnson asked Soviet Premier Alexei Kosygin to halt the Moscow signal. In 1969, leading microwave scientists gathered at the University of Virginia Medical College at Richmond for a 3-day symposium on biological effects and health implications of microwave radiation. Microwave authority Dr. Karel Maha of Czechoslovakia declared that microwave bioeffects included pains in the head and eyes, fatigue and overall weakness, dizziness and vertigo, poor night's sleep, irritability, fear, hypochondria, tension, depression, inhibition of intellectual functions, and decreased memory. That sounds like COVID.
It does, doesn't it?
Yet most of those at the symposium ignored the dangers of human bioeffects. Research biophysicist Dr. Alan H. Frey was more than interested, however. Frey had determined that humans could actually hear pulsed microwaves at frequencies ranging from 300 to 3,000 megahertz. The news starts to leak. Subtitle. It was not until syndicated columnist Jack Anderson broke the Moscow signal story in 1972 that the public began to learn the truth. Several months after Anderson's microwave column ran, the Soviet accused the US of irradiating chess wizard Boris Spassky with electronic devices, causing him to lose the championship match to Bobby Fischer.
Oh, I remember that controversy.
I know, right? On February 7, 1976, the Los Angeles Times quoted U.S. Ambassador Walter J. Stoessel Jr. as telling his staff that the microwaves could cause leukemia, skin cancer, cataracts, and various forms of emotional illness. Stoessel himself was reportedly suffering from a mysterious illness resembling leukemia, which caused nausea and bleeding in the eyes. Bleeding in the eyes. 2 of his predecessors at the embassy died of cancer. According to National Security Advisor Zbigniew Brzezinski, oh my God. You know, he actually was part of George Bush Jr.'s inner circle.
Really?
American, it's he was part of the Project for a New American Century. I've got his book behind me, The Great Chess Game. How about he's long lived? I mean, this guy's been around for a long time, brother. Anyway, U.S. Embassy personnel in Moscow. According to National Security Advisor Zbigniew Brzezinski, U.S. Embassy personnel in Moscow suffered the highest cancer rate in the world. Today, despite a brief respite, the bombardment of the embassy continues, while much of the evidence gathered by U.S. intelligence agencies remains classified. However, raising the lid on Project Pandora has uncovered a box full of secrets about microwave effects. So let's hang on a second, right? So 1976, they already know that microwave radiation is being used as a weapon against staff in Moscow.
That's right.
Embassy staff, right? Fast forward 40 years. Yeah? Havana syndrome. I don't know what it is. It's magical. I mean, if we had read this when the Havana syndrome was first described, that's what it is.
That's right.
Why would they pretend that they don't know what it is? That's what I want to know.
And, you know, mobile phone technology, 5G has microwave technology.
Of course.
Yeah.
Look, I don't know. The Eugene wavelength. Subtitle. A powerful radio signal that may be affecting human health has been monitored in several Eugene locations and in the air 3,000 feet above the city, proclaimed the Eugene Register Guard on March 26, 1978. And I'm quoting here. The source of the radio signal is unknown. Thus did Eugene, Oregon, become the first major population center to suffer the effects of electromagnetic biohazards. Shortly before the Register Guard, sorry, that's the name of the paper, Register Guard. It's a terrible name. Shortly before the Register Guard printed the story, a middle-aged Eugene man named Walter Deposky came down with symptoms remarkably similar to those attributed to microwave sickness. He noted a strange vibration emanating from within his home. He heard voices. He could not sleep. He suffered burning of his cornea. University of Oregon industrial hygienist Marshall Van Eert, called upon to investigate Deposky's complaints, found that he suffered the same symptoms while in the man's home. Disturbed, Van Eert recruited several local engineers to investigate. The engineers measured an unusual radio signal which they determined to be capable of producing potential biohazards. After unsuccessfully dogging public health agencies to investigate the matter further, Van Eert broke the story in the papers. Sorry, before I go on with the text, the Skinwalker Ranch crew has also been able to measure unusual microwave radiation. In fact, to the point where one guy, they opened up this cistern in the ground, like a heavy metal lid. They opened up, and radiation spikes were noted. But that happened before. So when he opened it up in a prior instance, he actually suffered physical damage. Something started to grow on his head, and he had to be hospitalized. So the microwave radiation, or whatever radiation it was, left a physical effect on him. So are we watching phenomena here that are partially made by us, but partially not? I mean, why would you target Eugene, Oregon? I mean, of all the cities in the world, right? I mean, U.S. Embassy in Moscow. Okay, I get it. It's just weird. So are we looking at different parties using the same technology, fighting with each other or trying to disable each other? Maybe not all of them necessarily players known to us, right? I want to leave it there. The Eugene signal was described as a radio frequency pulse at 4.75 megahertz. It was recorded within at least 2 local homes and at 3,000 feet above the city. The signal strength was rated at 500,000 watts, 10 times the Federal Communications Commission FCC radio license limit. The signal extended as far away as the next town, Corvallis. After receiving 150 documented complaints about the signal, Governor Bob Straub Senator Mark Hatfield and Congressman Jim Weaver were prompted to demand an Environmental Protection Agency investigation. A data analysis by the State Health Department's Radiation Control Section determined that there was probable cause linking the complaints to the strange frequency. Said Clifford Schrock, a Textronics Inc. corporate radio frequency analyst who had written electronics manuals for the CIA and the NSA. This is a quote. "I was surprised. I'd never seen anything like it before," end quote. Reactions to the story flooded in from around the world. Calls came in from people who had similar stories to tell about their own distant areas. Several calls came in from technicians offering their hypotheses about the signal, suggesting a possible link to secret weapons radiation. Dave?
The people of Eugene began to learn about electromagnetic radiation, or EMR, biohazards in a hurry. No one, however, could get to the bottom of Eugene's problem. The FCC's Enforcement Division Assistant Chief Richard Smith flatly attributed the frequency to a naval transmitter at Dixon, California, nicknamed the Dixon Duck. Van Oort and others disputed this conclusion. It's just migrating geese making swamp gas.
That's what it is.
That's what it is. The Navy denied that the Dixon Duck was responsible. When the EPA technicians finally arrived, however, they proclaimed that the mysterious signal did not exist at all. Van Oort, Schrock, and others who had felt the signal and measured it strongly disagreed with them. But the EPA investigators held a press conference at which they discredited the reports of the strange Eugene signal and promptly returned to their Las Vegas headquarters. What happens in Vegas, Mackie, stays in Vegas, where they refused to speak to reporters. After this, the investigation folded altogether. The Eugene signal remains an official mystery. Although the people of Eugene didn't know about it, both the US and Soviet military had been working for years to perfect the use of electromagnetic frequencies as lethal psychology weapons. Similar weapons reported in such places as Timmins and Kirkland Lake in Canada were traced to a notorious Soviet radio broadcast dubbed by amateur radio operators the Woodpecker. These effects bear a strong resemblance to the biohazards inherent in invisible weapons like electromagnetic pulse, EMP, under development by the Pentagon. Well, now it's no longer developed, everyone has it. The Woodpecker, on October 14, 1976, radio communications throughout the globe were disrupted by powerful radio waves emanating from the Soviet Union. The broadcast appeared irregularly and varied between very high and very low frequencies. When the US, Canada, Great Britain, and the Scandinavian countries protested the broadcast, the Soviets apologized, blaming the disturbance on experiments. After this, the nature of the wavelengths changed, and huge electromagnetic standing waves formed, thousands of miles long, penetrating the Earth and extending into the ionosphere. If you don't know what a standing wave is, if you've ever been in a very small pool and got, say, like a surfboard or something, and pushed it up and down, and when you do that, the wave emanates from you, bounces off the walls, come back to you, and if you harmonize that, and so then you can slowly build up the wave into an ever-increasing wave height, that's a standing wave. That's what that is. It's not a one-time wave that gets pushed out. You're amplifying it. You're using a very small amount of energy to increase the overall energy in the wave, in a standing wave. Back to the text. Because of its characteristic sound, the signal was dubbed the Woodpecker. The sound, which ham radio operators heard all over the world, sounded like the tapping of a pencil on a table at between 8 and 14 times a second. The wavelength was traced to an alleged experiment in the Soviet cities of Riga and Gomel. The standing waves accompanying these experiments stretched down to both coasts of North America and along the eastern frontier of the Soviet Union. The woodpecker has been blamed for subsequent shifts in weather patterns resulting from altered trade winds. The change of winds created a drought in the western United States, with severe effects on farming in the US economy. Several agencies fear that such standing waves might well have caused the disintegration of ships, including oil tankers in the Atlantic, but the potential effects of these standing waves on human beings is cause for much greater concern. Just as the human body's nervous system operates electromagnetically, so the Earth has an electromagnetosphere, which scientists claim can be altered to produce dramatic weather shifts. Meki, I'm just going to point out HAARP. HAARP.
You will find that we have a big section coming up on that, but keep going.
No dramas whatsoever. I have a screenshot created GIFs of our local weather showing an emanation of wind on the Earth's surface emanating from a single point. That doesn't happen. Well, it does, because you can see it on the Doppler. Anyway, the last... I'll finish this one off. In fact, the Earth's ionosphere oscillates at approximately the same frequency as human brainwaves, making it a perfect carrier off of which electromagnetic radiations in the brain wave range can be bounced without any change of frequency. The relationship between the electromagnetosphere and the electromagnetic basis of the human body can be exploited as a strategic weapon. Everyone has experienced mental and emotional shifts during changes of weather. Imagine the power open to those who, by flicking a switch, could control the Earth's atmosphere and change not only the weather, but the brainwaves of entire populations. Both the US and Soviet governments know that a strong pattern exists correlating geophysical phenomena and political disturbances, health, and mood swings. For the reasons the woodpecker signal alarmed the US intelligence community, Operation Mind Control went out of print almost as soon as it appeared in the bookstores. Not only did this phenomena happen in the US, it happened to editions published in the United Kingdom, France, Holland, and Japan as well. Photocopies of Operation Mind Control can be obtained for $17 from Aries Books, P.O. Box 1107, Aptos, California, 9501. Declassified in part. Sanitized copy approved for release 2011/12/21. CIA RDP 90-009 65R 000 100 260020-4. And I'm going to put a link to this document into the chat, and you'll see that in the video comments below.
If you look at the informational content we just shared with you, right? This was written in 1985, referring to a whole bunch that had stuff happened up until then. That's things like they were still working on the EMP weapons. They were still talking about Afghanistan being under Soviet occupation, etc., etc. But the informational content that you have there, and then if you think about what happened in the last 40 years since then, right? And all the things that we're talking about here, we're so far behind the 8 ball, it's not even funny. I mean, these directed energy weapons, the microwave weapons, the other things the experimentation on human beings. I mean, it's astounding. And you're right, Dave. The reason I put HARP in is because this is definitely moving into HARP direction.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. In fact, years ago, I went to a Nexus conference in, I think it was Brisbane or Sydney, and Nick Begich, who is I guess the primary researcher on HARP, as far as the conspiracy theory is concerned, was talking, and I was fascinated, and I downloaded his book, and I've got an excerpt of his book here that he co-wrote with someone else, and we'll talk about HARP a little bit. But it certainly is it's concerning that this technology clearly has been around for 40 years.
And you remember what Tesla had put in his electromagnetic standing wave amplifier, which means that you could derive energy anywhere on the planet by energizing that amplitude of the signal. And this is exactly what this is, but just in a different frequency.
Correct. Not useful. You can't usefully plug into it to use the energy, as it were, but it will affect you, right? That's the problem, because rather than voluntarily, let's say, harmonizing with it or plugging into it, let's say, you are being involuntarily exposed to it. You are suffering the effects if it's directed, at you. So yes, but you're right. Look, this is all based on Tesla. In fact, Nick Begich goes into that as well in his book.
Yeah, right.
I suggest you read it. I am trying to get Operation Mind Control, the book.
Oh.
And it is out of print, very much so. But I want to see if I can get it somewhere. Someone might be able to sell me a copy, which brings us, we probably can start on it. This is important.
Now.
Yeah, Associated Press article from Database Search. Okay, study cites Soviet progress on mined weapons. Okay, again, this was originally published in 1983, November 6. The document was released in 1998, and this particular document was created in 2016, right? And okay, this is the materials in the AP files were compiled by the Associated Press. The materials may not be republished without the express written consent of the Associated Press. And I consider this is an FOIA document. I don't really care too much about that. November 6, 1983, Sunday, AM cycle section, Washington Dateline, length 1,112 words, headline. Study cites Soviet progress on mined weapons. Byline by Barton Rappert, Associated Press writer, Dateline, Washington. And this is the body. The Soviet Union has achieved significant progress toward developing mind control weapons, according to U.S. Army study disclosed in a new book focusing on military uses of psychic phenomena. Author Martin Eborn contends that mind-altering effects or remote monitoring of brainwave activity are among possible reasons behind the Soviet microwave bombardment of the U.S. Embassy in Moscow. It's wonderful when things just go hand in hand, right? Soviet scientists view the brain as an apparatus available for probing and manipulation, Eborn says. He goes on, they are well aware that perfected techniques on ESP and other phenomena would make effective wartime strategies. Now, the publication of Eborn's book, Psychic Warfare, Threat or Illusion, comes amid increased interest in parapsychology research on Capitol Hill, as well as within the Pentagon, again, 1983, and U.S. intelligence agencies. A report prepared recently by the Congressional Research Service, an arm of the Library of Congress, concluded that psi phenomena could be applied in fields such as education, medicine, geological exploration, and business management. Mind control techniques also may prove useful for military intelligence and police work, along with crime, persuasion, mischief, and disinformation, it said. Psi phenomena include various forms of extrasensory perception, for example, telepathy and remote viewing of distant locations. Another form is psychokinesis, the ability to move or bend solid objects with the mind. Critics of parapsychology, however, charge that much of the research on those effects is either scientifically unsound or fraudulent. Other skeptics argue that even if the phenomena exist, they are too weak and unpredictable to have military value. Congressional supporters of C research include Senator Claiborne Pell, Democrat, or rather ranking Democrat on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. He said he had discussed the parapsychology field with Soviet researchers during a visit to the Soviet Union in August. And he says, I personally have never experienced or seen a psychic event, Pell said in a recent interview. But, he goes on, it seems to me there have been adequate scientific articles written that would indicate that they do occur. The 1981 Army study, quoted at length in Eberhard's book, analyzed the potential impact of psychic warfare tactics, as well as other battlefield factors, on the stamina and performance of U.S. artillery forces. It used the word psychotronics to describe the projection or transmission of mental energy by individual or collective mental discipline and control, or by an energy-emitting device, a kind of mind jammer. Dave?
Absolutely. The report cited the significant amount of research that is being completed by Warsaw Pact countries during the past decade in the area of psychic phenomena, of which psychotronics is one element. The Soviet Union in particular appears to have made significant progress toward developing psychotronic weapons, said the Army study entitled Fire Support Mission Area Analysis. To counter that potential threat, it said, the United States should develop special defensive tactics and begin to explore the use of its own mind control weapons. The Central Intelligence Agency scaled down its involvement with psychic research during the mid-1970s, when the agency was under intense criticism and scrutiny on Capitol Hill. But a US government official familiar with the parapsychology field, who spoke on the condition that he not be identified, said that currently there seems to be somewhat renewed interest in the CIA in psi phenomena, particularly psychokinetic metal bending. And we all know who that is. Pentagon units said to be interested in psychic research include the Defense Agency, Intelligence Agency, and Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. So that's the DIA and DARPA. Pell headed a delegation of 9 Senate Democrats who met with President Yuri V. Is that? Now Yuri V. Andropov
Vasily.
And the other Kremlin officials during their August 17 to 21st visit in Moscow. In his private discussions with Soviet parapsychologists, Pell said he had been unable to get a firm handle on the overall scope of scientific resources Moscow is devoting to this area. Quote, I was just there for too short a time to go into anything in any depth, he said. The senator said he had been particularly impressed by psychokinesis and remote viewing research being conducted by Robert G. Jahn, Dean of the School of Engineering Applied Science at Princeton University. Jahn's laboratory has carried out an intensive series of about 300 remote perception trials and over geographic distances of up to 11,000 miles. Also, the Princeton researchers are studying possible psychokinetic effects on batches of 9,000 plastic spheres tumbling through a random mechanical blah blah blah. Can't read it. The Congressional Research Service report said Soviet annual spending on psi research has been speculated to an amount to tens of millions of dollars, By contrast, total funding for parapsychology studies in the US probably does not greatly exceed $500,000 a year currently, then, with most of the money coming from foundations and other private sources. It said, the study prepared by Christopher H. Dodge of CRS Science Policy Research Division said, oh, there's the end. I can hear the music already. Goodness me, Becky. Time flies. Look,
it sure does.
Catch us, as Dave and Becky, as Plato's Cave, 7 a.m. Tuesday and Thursday morning, and yet again next week for another Shiny Side Out, Becky, and we ask all of our listeners to
be safe.
Take care.